Hello and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Judith, and today we're going to make Salisbury steak. With the rising costs of food, many people are leaning towards cheaper cuts of meat and a lot more hamburger or ground beef, so we're going to make use of that. First off, what exactly is Salisbury steak? It is basically a hamburger patty with some different seasoning. So we have some ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, Dijon mustard, an egg, some breadcrumbs, actually Panko Bread Crumbs, and an onion. For our sauce, it's typically served with mushroom and onion gravy. So we have some beef stock, mushrooms of course, and I got more onions. But why is it called Salisbury steak and not hamburger steak? Well, James Henry Salisbury invented it, so it's got his name. I will continue when we start chopping. We can have something to chat while we chop. So the first thing we need to do is grate half an onion. And let's continue the story about James Henry Salisbury. He was a doctor during the Civil War, and he was firmly convinced that to be healthy, you needed to eat meat, red meat. He expounded eating steak 3 times a day. So basically his diet was the first low-carb diet. And it's still called the Salisbury diet. When he devised this recipe for the wounded during the Civil War, his recipe says to use, pounded pulp of muscle meat. He didn't call it hamburger. Pounded muscle pulp. Yeah, it was not an appetizing description. But he thought feeding this to the wounded would help them regain health more quickly. Now, how did the name stay on the books instead of being called hamburger steak? As there was later a version which was called Hamburg steak. Okay. Now we go to the First World War. And English-speaking countries were desperate to avoid anything that sounded German. So Hamburg steak, not good. If you wanted to sell your hamburger, you had to find a different name. Well, they had one ready-made, Salisbury steak. So now we have our onion grated. And make sure if there's any large bits, just pull them out. And we're going to add our Panko Bread Crumbs. Give it a bit of a toss, because we want the breadcrumbs to soak in that onion and its juices for about 20 minutes. Okay, now it's time to mix our seasonings for the patties. So we got 1 clove of garlic, chopped or minced, 1 egg. Here you can choose between dry mustard powder or Dijon mustard. And since I do have dry mustard powder, I am going to use it. So there are very few recipes that I will use it in. If you're using Dijon, you want 3 teaspoons If you're using dry mustard powder, 2 teaspoons. Okay. That. And we want a teaspoon. Well, actually, you should have beef bouillon cubes, which is what the recipe calls for. I don't have any, but I'm going to use my beef bouillon. Better than bouillon. And 1 teaspoon is equivalent to 1 cube, apparently. So, in we go. And we want 2 tablespoons of ketchup. Oh god. I hate the easy squeeze bottles. They don't easy squeeze. Give me a second here. One. I need both hands to squeeze this. 2. There we go. And half a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. And I have gone through how the heck do you pronounce Worcestershire sauce in a different video. I will link that. Right up there in the corner. And we're going to top that all off with 1 pound of ground beef. Now, Dr. Salisbury used ground sirloin. He preferred lean beef, but use whatever you like. Mix it really well. If you find a big piece of onion, just pop that out. Sometimes when you grate your onion, it doesn't, bits fall. Okay. There we go. Okay, as far as I know, there is no known shape that Salisbury preferred his patties at. Generally, wherever I worked, whatever restaurants I've been to, they seem to do them as an oval. But they are supposed to be fairly thick. 1 2/3 centimeter. So we're still, but this is supposed to make 5 patties. So I'm assuming they're not huge patties. Now, I've only ever seen them as an oval patty. Okay, and I'm of the era where we measured things in inches, not centimeters, so I'm not really sure how thick a centimeter is, but I'll do my best. I think that looks good, and it's nice and oval. I'm probably erring more on the side to 1.5 centimeters. And remember, his recipe was written during the American Civil War. I know I just assume when I say Civil War, people understand it's the American Civil War, because that's the only one I'm really familiar with, being in Canada. And we never had a Civil War as such. So I think I'm going to get 4 patties out of this. So not too bad. If they were smaller, they would match Dr. Salisbury's measurements, but mine are probably thicker and a bit bigger. After all, he was cooking for invalids or wounded. So he probably, well, it's hard to say whether he wanted to give them a lot or just a little because they were wounded. So we're just going to make 4. Seems good to me. Actually, the meat mixture feels really nice. And it's holding together wonderfully. Sometimes when you make a hamburger, it doesn't want to stay together. This is staying together beautifully. It feels lovely as you pat it. Okay. So there are our Salisbury steaks. And next is to cook them. Okay, our cast iron pan is really hot. I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil in it and give it a wipe around. I'm pretty sure in the Civil War they would have been cooking these in a cast iron. I'm going to pop a couple in. And we don't want to cook them through. We are searing each side. They will still be raw when they come out, and we will finish cooking later. Okay. Once your steaks are seared on both sides, remove them from the pan, put them on a plate, set them aside. If your pan is a little dry, add some more oil. Then you add your onions, and that's half of an onion chopped, 2 garlic cloves minced, and I have 5 fairly good sized cremini mushrooms sliced. Now we're going to let those cook until the mushrooms start to release their juice and take on some color. Okay, now that we've got our mushrooms and onions cooked, the mushrooms are looking wonderful, I'm going to kind of push them a little bit aside, and we're going to add about 2 tablespoons of butter. Let that melt. You don't want to do this on a high heat, so you do want it on a fairly low heat by now. We need 2 tablespoons of just all-purpose flour. And I'm going to switch the spatula for a spoon. Stir this all in. And we do want to give it a couple of minutes for the flour to cook. You don't want your gravy to end up tasting like flour. And it will if you don't cook the flour. So just, you don't want it to burn, so stir it. And you do want to get all the flour cooked, so you need to get it all in contact with the hot pan. So we give that a couple minutes to cook, and we'll be right back. Alright, now that we've had our flour cooking for a bit, it's time to add our liquid. So sorry, we have 2 cups of beef broth, and add it slowly because otherwise things are going to clump. And scrape all that goodness up off the bottom of the pan. There we go. And we have, I don't know why, but a half a cup of water. It makes a lot of gravy. And honestly, I don't know why this is not called Salisbury steak and gravy, because the gravy is just as involved as the steak, or maybe even more so. Now once we have that all in, let's bring that up to a simmer. So we're going to raise the temperature here. And we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients. Yeah, we're not finished yet. We need, oh yeah, remember the Dijon mustard from before? We need it again. We want 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. That's a pretty generous teaspoon. That's probably 2 because that first one was pretty big. Then we need 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. And whisk it all in. Now, if you want to use a whisk, go for it, but a spoon should probably work. What's that? Okay, that's the Dijon. Get that puppy blended in there. Make sure the Dijon gets blended in. And as always, taste. Oh. Yeah, that's weird. I'm sorry, not my, initially not my favorite. Hopefully once it cooks down it will be better. But I'm thinking it definitely needs some salt. And less of something. Ooh. Wow. Let's try that again. Yeah, definitely needs some salt in there. Okay, I mean, it's not terrible. It's just not a flavor that I'm used to when it comes to gravy. So, but then again, it's not a gravy I'm used to. Okay, the salt helped a lot. So I think we may have it. So now we just need to bring this up to a simmer, let it start to thicken, and then we will put our Salisbury steaks in and let them cook in it. And then we take them back out and we do more stuff. Yeah, I told you the gravy is a little more involved than the Salisbury steaks themselves. Okay, we're starting to get some bubbles here. So we're going to put our steaks back in. And it's going to get a little crowded because we got 4 steaks for 1 pan. But we're not trying to sear them, so that's okay. Now we wait to see when it starts to bubble. Hopefully everything is mixed well. Looking like maybe some Dijon Mustard bubbles there, but whatever. We don't want it to boil. So when you start to see bubbles, turn it down. Because we just want to reheat the steaks. Then we take them back out. Right, now that we've got our steaks cooked through, and that's a big reason why you're putting them back in the pan, because they were not cooked through to start with. We only seared them. I'm going to take them out. Ooh, I'll put them aside. And we're going to get that. Oh, it's already bubbling, so we don't need to turn it up much. But we want to get this to thicken a little. And time to get the rest of our dinner ready. So some mashed potatoes and some green beans. So this is Salisbury steak. Yeah, traditionally served with mashed potatoes and English kind of vegetables like peas or beans or whatever. But Dr. Salisbury thought that lean meat steak specifically was good for you, to heal you, to give you strength. And during the American Civil War, he was a doctor, and his prescription for the wounded was eat beef. So he devised a low-cost, easily made, his recipe's rather interesting, so it's not that easy to make unless that's all you're doing all day. But he was a doctor, so they followed his recommendation. And he thought vegetables were bad for you. He actually thought meat gave you energy, strength, and health, and vegetables poisoned your body. Well, times change. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Consider subscribing. I do put out a video every week. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate you all for watching, liking, subscribing. My subscribers are so dear to me. Please leave me a comment. Honestly, right now, I do have to eat this. This is really so good. And I'm surprised with the amount of mustard in it. You can't even taste it. It is delicious. I'll see you again soon with another recipe.